The first station, Jesus is condemned. A Korean youth is surrounded by riot police. The young man has joined other students who are desperately seeking the right to freedom and self-determination. Wearing protective helmets, shields, and clubs, the police respond with force, encouraging violent reaction. Many in the law enforcement group are the same age as the young man, pitting brother against brother. Other young people have raised their voices in protest, in Tiananmen Square in China, at Kent State University in Ohio, to name but two. In standing up for what they believed, they became the enemy. Jesus, you know what it's like to be taken captive by armed soldiers. You spoke the truth and were condemned by people in power. When Peter responded with his sword, you told him to put it away, saying, "Those who use the sword are sooner or later destroyed by it." Matthew 26:52. Give me courage to speak out against injustice wherever I may find it. Strengthen my conviction to support others in their struggle for justice. Help me to deal with conflict your way, the way of peace and non-violent resistance. The second station, Jesus carries the cross. This is an all too familiar scene in Guatemala and throughout Central America. A father carrying his child's coffin. Bent under devastating sorrow, he walks the dusty road in quiet dignity. Brutal oppression, poverty, and disease are taking the lives of children, the most innocent and vulnerable, every day. What a terrible cross for any parent to bear. Why are children and other innocent people dying throughout Central America? What kind of power chooses to oppress the weak and defenseless? What can I do to help put an end to this terrible suffering? Jesus, you were made to carry a heavy cross. You chose to pay the price of love. When I think of how I complain over little things that upset me, I feel very small. Teach me to choose love, justice, and life, that I may carry my crosses with patience and dignity, the way you and the Guatemalan Father and so many others do. The third station, Jesus falls the first time. A young Vietnam veteran has fallen under the weight of his grief. He is overcome by sadness. His own leg wound is minor compared with the wounds of others. Reliving the memories of war, he feels sorrow, guilt, hurt, and betrayal. He watched friends die in combat and witnessed innocent people being killed. Some of his buddies are still missing in action. He wonders when people will learn to live in peace. Yet in the grieving process, he is cleansed and strengthened. He can go on. Jesus, the weight of the cross crushed you to the ground. Yet, knowing that death lay ahead, you still got up and went on. When burdens of sorrow weigh heavily upon me, I often find it difficult to go on with my life. When I stumble and fall, when I mourn for what is lost, give me your strength to rise and walk anew. The fourth station, Jesus meets his mother. A sorrowing mother cradles her dying son in her arms. Her sorrow is reflected in her eyes as she prepares to let him go. She represents countless other mothers deprived of their children because of poverty and disease. He is so young and was once full of life. But poverty does not respect age. The bond between mother and child silently communicates their shared pain. The mother would gladly trade places with her child. The son wishes he could free his mother from this suffering. The mother's heart is breaking as she accepts this sorrow. Jesus, when you met your mother Mary on the road to Calvary, you felt her pain in seeing you suffer. Each of you wanted to ease the suffering of the other. Yet through this sorrow, you knew her broken heart would become a source of comfort to mothers in other times and places. Open my heart so that when, like Mary, I see a loved one suffer, I may become a source of compassion to others. The fifth station. Simon helps Jesus. Two young boys doing a man's work, lifting heavy coral out of the water. Young muscles strain at the heavy weight. An impossible task for a child, only made possible because one helps the other. Being forced to do manual labor such as this robs them of their childhood. The lure of evil often pushes children with little experience of play or study into drugs and prostitution. Poor people have very little choice. Do an adult's work if you wish to eat a child's meal. Every source of strength and energy counts. How often, Lord, do I take for granted the back-breaking labor of others to produce the food I eat or the clothes I wear? How many times have I passed you by in the struggling person whom I didn't stop to help? Simon was forced to help you when the soldiers pulled him from the crowd. Yet when Simon lifted your cross, he knew the gift of a burden shared. The sixth station. Veronica wipes Jesus' face. People are left with nothing when turbulent seas repeatedly invade the tiny lowland country of Bangladesh. A wife strokes the face of her sick husband, ravaged with cholera, as they share the meager possessions that remain. Even when all else is lost, the healing hand of compassion can still be extended. Jesus, Veronica saw your pain and felt it very deeply. She dared to break through the crowd to take some of your pain away. Touched by her compassion, you left the imprint of your face on her cloth, as you carried the imprint of her loving gesture in your heart. Teach me to let go of the things that hold me back from reaching out to others. Give me the courage of Veronica to be willing to risk all in the name of compassion. The seventh station. Jesus falls a second time. A Namibian woman crawls on her journey through the Kalahari Desert. Despite her disability, she carries her child on her back and drags herself across the hot African sands. The effects of war, famine, and disease have taken their toll on her and many others in Namibia. This persevering woman exemplifies the Namibian people who are picking themselves up and beginning anew in the spirit of Jesus. After 30 years of struggling for freedom, these friendly, peaceful people are working now to build a new society. Lord, none of us is perfect. We all have disabilities. Some are physical, others are emotional or psychological. When living conditions seem difficult, it is hard to keep going. I want to quit, to give up. Help me to learn from this woman's perseverance. Give me your spirit, Jesus, and help me to continue in spite of difficult odds. Eighth station. Jesus comforts the women. In Chile and in many other countries, women of all ages are mourning. They grieve for the innocent ones who were unjustly imprisoned. Husbands, fathers, younger brothers have been taken away or disappeared, often to unknown places. While these women mourn, they march to demand freedom for their loved ones. Their faces are masked in pain. They do not shout or scream. Signs express their cry for justice. To demonstrate like this is to risk imprisonment. The love in these women is stronger than fear. When you were carrying your cross, Jesus, you met other courageous women who wept for your suffering. You comforted them with your healing words. Jesus, your strength shines forth in these sorrowing women. When I am called to speak out and stand up for others, I sometimes hold back. I'm afraid of what others may think. Give me your courage, Jesus, in situations that call for my taking a risk. Help me to remember that your spirit is within me always, comforting me in time of opposition. The ninth station. Jesus falls a third time. A young Filipino woman in tattered clothing sleeps, huddled beneath a store window, the window ledge her only shelter. The weight of extreme poverty forces her to the ground, homeless, and deprived of her dignity. A study in irony. Passers-by ignore this true image of God, yet are willing to pay exorbitant prices for religious images made of plaster. In the Philippines, a typical statue sells for $245 and a silver rosary for $28, while the average daily income is $1.50. Lord, when did I see your face in the least likely, the homeless, the outcast, the abandoned, and pass you by? The 10th station. Jesus is stripped. Distressed eyes plead for a sign of recognition. Rags that were once clothing barely cover thin flesh. Alone and starving, the person seems stripped of all human dignity. We are reminded of the prophet Isaiah's words, "There was in him no stately bearing to make us look at him, nor appearance that would attract us to him. He was spurned and avoided by all, one of those from whom men and women hide their faces." Isaiah 53, 2-3. The Church has traditionally applied this description to Jesus. And in our faith, we believe that through Jesus' suffering, all humanity is healed and saved. Jesus, you are the person wearing rags in Bangladesh. You are the homeless person keeping warm on a New York subway grating. You are the child with the swollen belly in Ethiopia. You are in each person who has been stripped of dignity, each person who is deprived of the basic human rights of food, shelter, and clothing. Help me realize that each time I reject another person, I am rejecting you. Give me new eyes to recognize you in the poor and destitute. Give me a new heart and new hands to work towards alleviating others' suffering. The 11th station. Jesus is nailed to the cross. An elderly person struggles along in the Philippines. Wrinkled skin and uncertain steps betray the wisdom that lies within. Earnest eyes reveal a determined spirit. How often the world forgets the giftedness of the aged and thinks of them as not useful. Growing old should not mean growing lonely and abandoned, yet this venerable image of God is often cast aside as a burden. When accepting the blessings of old age, we must also accept the cross of weakness and infirmity that sometimes accompanies old age. Human bodies wear out. They were not designed to last forever. We will all face this reality someday. Jesus, each time we ignore the elderly, we nail you to the cross of indifference. Give us the insight to appreciate their wisdom. Give us the patience to accept limitations. The 12th station. Jesus dies on the cross. Another child dies on the cross of neglect. Children in poverty are often physically and emotionally abandoned, making them easy prey for drug dealers. The lure of money and drugs is very strong. Children become trapped. Steal or deal if you want more relief. Say no and face the pangs of hunger again. Not an easy choice. Who would not want to be freed from the painful life of poverty? In our opposition to drug addiction, we forget that each addict is someone's son or daughter. Every day we are faced with our own difficult choices, to seek the truth or the easy way out, to forgive or hold a grudge, to be honest with ourselves or blame someone else. The list is endless. We read in Scripture, "Choose life that you may live." Deuteronomy 30:19. Jesus, you chose a life of justice, love, and truth. You accepted death on the cross that we might live. Fill me with your Spirit. Help me to choose life in all situations and be a source of hope for others. The 13th station. The body of Jesus is taken down. Love reveals itself most in difficult times. It's easy to befriend someone when things are going well, but to stand by someone seriously ill, to comfort a person in time of loss or separation demonstrates the love Jesus meant when he said, "Love one another as I have loved you." John 15:12. Relieving someone else's burden can turn even strangers into friends. Jesus, after you died, only a few friends stayed behind to take your body down from the cross. Some of your followers turned away in disappointment. Others fled in fear. Give me the strength to be a faithful friend. Help me to be consistent in my love for others so that I stand by them in good times and bad, in joy and sorrow, and in their struggle for justice. The 14th station. Jesus is buried. How carefully this body is wrapped and lowered into the earth. Onlookers express their grief and mourn in different ways. Even the poorest grave can be a proper resting place when the body is treated reverently. Every culture has its own practices for respecting the dead. To be buried as a pauper in an unmarked grave represents the ultimate abandonment in life. Yet so many people in the world are buried without recognition, with no proper burial place. Sometimes this is preventable. Other times it is not. Massive deaths occur from famine, disease, and wars. Entire populations are wiped out from earthquakes, floods, volcanic eruptions. Homeless people die without family or friends. Jesus, you had no burial place of your own. Yet when your body was taken down from the cross, your friends reverently placed it in a borrowed tomb. Help me always to remember that each person is a sacred object to be treated with reverence both in life and in death. Lord, through me, your love reaches out to others. When I respect myself and others, I am recognizing and praising the beauty of your creation.